First, before we get started with today's lesson, let me apologize for last week. Oh, I felt awful, absolutely positively awful. And at this point, I'm not positive if it was the gluten-free processed food that I ate, or I started taking a new supplement that a friend had recommended to me that may have been the culprit as well. But something definitely affected me, and I was achy and I hurt and I was bloated and I gained like 3 or 4 pounds within just a couple of days. And my mental attitude was just the pits. It was a really, really bad week. But I'm feeling much better today. And I am going to be much more cautious about introducing new foods into my diet in the future. It was definitely a good lesson learned for me. So today we're going to talk about how to read labels. And the first thing I want to say about this is to not get overwhelmed. I talk to so many people that say that they have attempted to go gluten-free and then gave up because they had such a hard time determining if there was gluten hidden in a product. And so they just felt like they were spinning their wheels and they just decided to give it up instead of pressing forward. So today, that is my number one message for you is do not get overwhelmed. There are some easy rules to follow, and I'm going to make it really, really easy for you to figure out if the food you're eating has gluten in it or not. The other thing that we need to talk about is how strict you really need to be. If you have celiac disease, then you have to be extremely strict. You cannot have one molecule of gluten with celiac disease. It is a very, very different situation than if you have a non-celiac gluten sensitivity. And this is the second place I see people get overwhelmed. The first place is in label reading. The second place is in getting online and reading about going gluten-free. And when you do that, you most likely are coming across material that is aimed at people who have been diagnosed with celiac disease. And they really have to be super strict. So you will start reading about having to use separate cooking utensils, having to buy new pots and pans, having to use a separate prep surface than the rest of your family. Because if you have celiac disease, even if someone has put a piece of bread on a plate and then said, oh, that bread doesn't need to be on that plate, that patient or that person has celiac disease, so they take the bread off the plate and they serve the plate to the person with celiac disease. Just the crumbs that were left over from the bread on the plate is enough to cause someone with celiac disease to have a reaction. So it's a very different situation if you have celiac disease. And one of the reasons that I do recommend testing if you are having any symptoms that might suggest that you have celiac disease. If you have non-celiac gluten sensitivity, then you are probably going to be able to tolerate small amounts of gluten. So when I look at a label, what I am looking for is any obvious source of gluten. And I'm really looking for it to be in that first 3 to 5 ingredients on the label. If it's not one of the first 3 to 5 ingredients, then the amount of gluten in that product is probably low enough that I can tolerate it fine. So I really do it on a case-by-case basis as to whether or not I feel like I will eat a product if gluten is in some of the ingredients towards the end of the list. So what are we looking for on the label? We're looking for 3 things. We're looking for wheat, barley, and rye. We're also looking for oats, but oats actually don't contain gluten. The reason we're looking for oats is that they can be contaminated with wheat. They are grown often in the same field as wheat was grown in the prior season, and they are often processed on the same machinery in the same factories that wheat is processed on. So it can be contaminated. So if you're very sensitive to gluten, then you will want to avoid oats unless it says gluten-free oats on the label. I myself can tolerate oatmeal, as far as I can tell, just fine. And so I still try to buy gluten-free oatmeal if I'm going to eat a bowl of oatmeal, but if something contains oats, I'm not very concerned about whether or not those oats are gluten-free. Eating gluten-free has become so much easier since companies have started labeling their items as gluten-free. Now, all gluten-free items will not necessarily be labeled gluten-free, but a lot of them are, and that is just a marketing ploy, but it's a marketing ploy that works well for us. The companies that label their products gluten-free have to guarantee that there is a very, very, very low amount of gluten in the product or none at all. So for us that can tolerate tiny, tiny, tiny amounts of gluten, we can trust all of these products that say gluten-free. For someone who has celiac disease that's extremely sensitive to gluten, then they are not going to be able to tolerate every gluten-free product, because some of these gluten-free products actually do contain very, very fine trace amounts of gluten. The other reason that labels have gotten so much easier to read is due to the Food Allergen Labeling and Consumer Protection Act of 2004. And what this did was it said that if any product contains any of the 8 major allergens, then those allergens must be listed on the product label by their common name. The allergy listing may appear either within the ingredient list or following the ingredient list in a contains blank statement. The 8 major food allergens that must be listed are milk, egg, fish, shellfish, tree nuts, wheat, peanuts, and soybeans. So if a product has wheat in it, it will say on the label, contains wheat. It makes this so much easier when you know that. This regulation, however, does not apply to barley, rye, or oats, so we still have to watch the label for those things. These are all of the names for wheat products that you may see on a label. Again, you don't have to concern yourself about the exact name because it will say contains wheat. Wheat may also be found in a number of things like artificial flavoring, caramel color, dextrin, food starch, glucose syrup. I'm not even going to go through the whole list, but if it contains wheat, it will say contains wheat. I made a slide on that just to again emphasize that if it contains wheat, it will say contains wheat on the product. Barley is another story, however. Barley is an ingredient that's not very often used as a flour, but it's used often as a thickener in soups and stews. And it's commonly used as a flavoring or flavor enhancement. The most common place we see this is in malt. Malt is your biggest source of barley for most people. This includes beer. This includes malted milk balls, or those yummy robin's eggs that you get at Easter time. Those are malt. Rice Krispies are malted rice. And so malt hides in a lot of places, but luckily the label will say malt on it. So when we're looking for barley, we're looking for the word barley or we're looking for the word malt. The other places you can find barley are barley extract and barley flavoring, barley enzymes, and then maltose, which is malt sugar. So again, we're looking for either the word barley or the word malt, and that tells us that there's barley in the product. We can find this in cereals, malted milk, malt vinegar, beer, rice milk, sauces, soups, protein bars, and snack foods. Rye is much less common than either wheat or barley. Most of the things that have rye in them are going to say rye because it's rye bread, rye crackers. It's a very distinct grain. Rye whiskey is the other thing. So we are looking for the ingredient list to say rye, barley, malt, or wheat. Really, those four things. If you don't see those four things on the product label, then it likely does not contain gluten. And you will often see that the product says gluten-free on that. There are some potential hidden sources of gluten that I want to cover real quickly for those that are super sensitive and want to be 100% sure that they're not getting any trace amounts of gluten. And in these situations, you can always call the manufacturer. There's very often a number on the label that you can call to get information on the product. And they're usually very helpful in helping you figure these things out. One of the things is modified food starch. This can be made from corn, tapioca, potato, wheat, or other sources. It's usually corn in the United States. If it's wheat, the label is going to say it contains wheat. If you just see starch, it typically means cornstarch in the United States. And again, if for some reason it means wheat, it is going to say contains wheat on the label. Caramel color is another thing that can contain wheat. It's usually made from, or it can be made from barley as well. If it's caramel color and it doesn't specify what the source is, it is possible that it's barley. If it's wheat, then it's going to say that it contains wheat. Most of the caramel color in the United States, though, is made from coal byproducts. So most of the time that's not going to affect us. But if there's something you eat regularly that has caramel color in it, you may want to be aware as to whether or not you feel like that causes you problems, or you may just want to call the manufacturer and double check. Dextrin is something on the label that could be made from wheat, but again, it's going to say contains wheat. Hydrolyzed vegetable protein, plant protein, and textured vegetable protein. All of these things could contain wheat or could be made from wheat. But it's going to say contains wheat if that's the case. Maltodextrin is our one exception to the malt rule, and maltodextrin can be corn, potato, or rice based or wheat based. If it's wheat, it's going to say wheat. So maltodextrin is the only malt thing that is the exception to our barley malt rule. And then vinegars. Most of your vinegars are fine. Malt vinegar is derived from barley and it's not fine. You cannot have malt vinegar as part of a gluten-free diet. Distilled white vinegar can be made from a variety of things: grapes, corn, wheat, other sources. Again, though, if it's got wheat in it, it's going to have to say contains wheat on the label. So let's look at a couple of labels here. This one, as you can see, it's got some weird ingredients in it, but it says gluten-free. So you don't have to concern yourself about what xanthan gum is or cornstarch, potato starch. It says starch. Does that mean that there could be gluten in it? It says gluten-free, so you don't have to worry about that. And there's nothing on there that says contains wheat. So you can feel safe eating a product that says gluten-free on it. Here's another example of something. And if you look, the first few ingredients have nothing to do with wheat, but the second to last, I think, ingredient says soy sauce, which is wheat, soybeans, and salt. And so there is your line right below that says contains wheat. That's all you have to see. It contains wheat, and you know that product has gluten in it. Now, this particular product is going to be very low in gluten, and the load is going to be very low, and the likelihood is you're not eating a ton of the Italian dressing. You're probably only having a few tablespoons full. So it is likely that you will be able to eat this without any kind of reaction unless you have celiac disease. In the beginning, you probably want to avoid everything that says it contains wheat, but I don't want you to stress out if you end up eating something like this that has very, very low levels. And once you've been gluten-free for a good period of time, whether you decide it's going to be 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, then you can start adding these things back that have low levels of gluten and figuring out if they bother you or not. Here's another example of something that's got lots of weird ingredients that at the end with long names, but the bottom line says contains wheat, milk, and soybeans. So you know that there is definitely wheat in that product. The ingredients on this, again, are a lot of very strange words that are probably hard for most people to define. And a lot of people would look at this label and say, I have no idea if I'm able to eat this. But there are two things here that tell us that we can. Number one, in the contains, it just says contains soy. It doesn't say anything about wheat. And then it also says down there towards the bottom, it says gluten-free. So we know that we're able to eat this particular product. And then the last label I want to talk about is this label that says may contain wheat. You will find that a lot of companies will put this on their product if the product itself does not contain wheat, but it's processed in a facility that there could be some cross-contamination. So by far and large, you are going to be fine eating these products. But again, for someone that's super sensitive or someone that has celiac disease, they probably want to contact the manufacturer and find out how likely that is. These statements are usually put on there for people that have life-threatening allergies that would be severely affected if they even had a trace of the allergen. And so usually these foods are fine for you to eat. So your homework for this week, I want you to do two things. I want you to start looking at all of the foods that you eat and look at the label and look to see if there is any source of gluten. If you have any questions about any label, take a picture of it and post it in our Facebook group or message it to me, and I will let you know if it contains gluten or not. But start looking at that for everything that you eat. You're going to be surprised that there are some of the things that you might right now think have gluten in them that don't. Some surprises to me when I very, very first started going gluten-free were potato chips, tortilla chips. Those things don't have any gluten in them. And so I was pleasantly surprised that there were still some starchy things that I could eat whenever I got a craving for that kind of food, and I didn't have to worry about them having gluten in them. Apparently my computer is about to die. It's a good thing that we're almost finished. So, and then I want you to start making a list about, I want you to start making a list of the items that you eat on a normal basis that contain gluten. And we're going to use that list to help find substitutes or help you figure out what you're going to eat instead of that. And so that is going to be a very important list for you to have. So start reading those labels, start making a list of the foods that you eat, and then next week we'll start talking about actually taking that food out and what you can do to find some substitutes. Again, let me know if you have any questions. Post them in our Facebook group or message me. I'm happy to answer anything for you. See y'all next week.